We had the opportunity to have a conversation with Jordan Laurin, a teacher at St. Peter Catholic High School in Orléans, Ontario. Jordan introduces us to his service dog, Macintosh, and walks us through the process of integrating Macintosh into his daily life as a teacher, along with recommendations for integrating service animals into schools based on his experience.
Please note that we referred to Macintosh as a support animal when the proper terminology in this case is service animal. We hope that this mini podcast can provide insight and inform pre-service and service teachers in the field who are looking to integrate or know someone who would like to integrate a service animal in their teaching. Just beginning with this first question, can you tell us a bit about yourself and your support animal, and what was the reasoning and purpose behind integrating him in the classroom?
Yes. Well, I was taking a lot of time off from work to try and figure out what was going on with me in terms of my mental health. And I had gone onto a couple of medications. I had taken, probably about a year worth of work off in about 2 years. And it was just trying to really figure out what was going on. And I really did not enjoy the effects of the medications and how it made my brain feel. So I spoke with my doctor, and I was asking if I could turn my dog into a service dog. So I had Macintosh for about 7 years at that point. And I knew he was really well behaved. So that's when I started to look into how to get him to be a service dog with me and what that meant. And even just the terminology of service dog was hard to find for Ontario because there's not a lot of good resources, we'll say. There's a lot more for Americans or Canadians, but Ontario specific, the resources were really difficult to find, and it was a very, very slow 3-year process to get him in. It took a lot out of me to do it. At that point in my school board, there was no other teacher that had a service dog with them for a mental health issue. The other few people that do have dogs are typically for physical disabilities, but I was the first for the mental health end of it. So they didn't even have the paperwork or the framework for what that would look like. Even though they had it in place for students, they didn't have it in place for teachers, and they just really weren't sure about a lot of things in the start, and it took really 2 to 3 years for them to start figuring out what that was going to look like.
Wow. So it wasn't an easy process to get that all started.
No, and a lot of it was like, I'd be like, okay, well, what do you guys want? They said we want certification form. I'm like, from where, from who? And they said, we don't know. And I was like, oh, okay. So like, they didn't even know what they wanted, let alone I didn't know where to get it.
Wow. So what has your experience been like integrating your support dog in the classroom, in the school environment? And did you face any challenges with that?
Yeah, a ton, and it was honestly terrible. One of my anxiety, I have a really bad anxiety when it comes to things that are non-logical or what I call stupid, or I'm very impatient with stuff, and so the fact that this was taking so long was very stressful, and having to be off work, away from peers and friends, trying to negotiate the service dog service that he provides, but through my union as well as the school board, was very slow, and meetings were months and months between. And even once we got like the union involved, we had to go to provincial. It was just a very slow process. And then it's been about 1.5 years now. It's been phenomenal.
That's wonderful to hear. What about the students? How did they react?
With a lot of students having anxiety in the classroom. So it was nice for them to see somebody that also struggles with mental health issues, with ADHD, with anxiety, and showing them a way to cope that was healthy. And just having him in the classroom, kids can't play with him. He doesn't sit with them or anything. He just stays with me the whole time. But just having him in the classroom, it was a really good learning tool for me to say, like when I get anxious, one of the things I do is I play with him, or, I take a walk. And so it was trying to give these kids some tools they could use, with me being the exemplar for them. And that's really where I saw my teaching I taught myself empathy that way. I was having a really hard time with that. And I was able to, see these kids with anxiety and with ADHD in a different light. There's two kids that come in almost every single day just to look at Macintosh. They love looking at his paws, and they'll just come in, and that's part of their calm down strategy. They go for a 5-minute walk with 2 minutes to come and see Macintosh, and then they talk to him, and then they just go on with their day. And so it's starting to be part of other people's process. He's been a very, very positive impact in our school, I think, since coming.
That's amazing.
I think, that's lovely. I love hearing that, and that he's become part of not just a big part of your life, but other people and students around that may not have that outlet at home. So I think that mental health is definitely something that's not really focused on in schools and in curriculum. So it's a nice way to bring it in a different light.
Mm-hmm. We were also wondering, Jordan, if you have had a student with a support animal.
I have. When I was teaching in high school, there was one boy who was a runner, and he had a black lab that was trained to basically sit down and pull him and slow him down. So he was always tied around the kid's waist, and the kid could only run so far. And it was more like to stop him from running away. And so I've seen the dogs in use. And I've also seen there's like therapy dogs that come into schools, which are completely different. But yeah, I've only ever seen them in a good way. I just felt the therapy dogs weren't enough. I felt like they needed to be there consistently to make a real impact. Whether it's at university where they have like the puppy rooms and stuff for exams for kids that need it. So I've had a couple of kids, but mostly at the high school level.
Okay.
And that was another issue, was that I was in elementary with a service dog, and they were just concerned about little kids going up, not knowing the rules and grabbing him and whatnot. And honestly, the biggest problem I've had is with teachers not knowing when to stay away from him. The little kids will walk by, they'll cover their eyes and be like, we can't look at him, we can't talk to him. If the little kids can follow the rules, it's the teachers that have been. And it's more of a joke now. They're like, is anybody looking? I'm like, he could say hi to him, but like he knows better and they don't. And it's almost funny that it's the kids they were worried about when in reality it's the teachers. So
I faced the same thing with I was coordinator at a day camp, and we had one of those service animals, and it was the monitors that were always trying to play with the dog and touch the dog, and the kids would be the ones respecting the rules and being really considerate of everything, right? So I think it's funny that the school boards are worried about the students when that's not always the case. So what recommendation might you have for teachers that are looking to integrate a service animal or support animal in the classroom?
If you're going to get a service dog from an organization, it's typically about a 2-year wait. So start planning ahead. Start looking into whether you already have insurance. You're going to need insurance to bring the dog in. And if you're a homeowner, most homeowners already have insurance actually for their pets. Because he's my property, it's almost like at your house. If somebody was to slip on your driveway, your house insurance covers it. Whereas if my property or my dog bit somebody, he would be covered actually under my house insurance. And then there were some obvious things that, he had to have all his shots. He had to be properly groomed, which I totally agreed with. But the certification of a service dog is really difficult because the legal definition of a service dog is if you have a doctor's note from your regular doctor just saying like, Jordan needs a service dog, that is legally all you need. And that's part because there is no legislation guiding service dogs. There are for things like guide dogs, therapy dogs, but service dogs and service animals are a very, very unregulated domain. And yeah, it leaves a lot of gray zone where a lot of people just don't know what to do. So be prepared for not being able to find what you're looking for. And, you have to just happen to find the right person at the right time that knows exactly what you're looking for. You probably won't find it on the internet. You probably have to speak to your union. It's definitely a union issue where you probably won't be doing it by yourself. if you look up definitions, it's going to vary everywhere, but you have to figure out what your school board wants. And the school board has the right to dictate what their needs are. So a regular service dog is able to go into any public space that an average person can walk into. So if you can walk into a McDonald's or a movie theater or a dentist office, my dog's allowed to go with me. But when you go into a school, you can't just walk into a school. You have to have proper clearance and stuff like that. So that's why they're able to sort of dictate why you can't bring your dog in. Prisons are another place that do that. But I've brought him to hockey games. I've brought him to the dentist. I've brought him to the hospital. And you're not going to get a lot of negative feedback in Ontario. But if you were to do the same thing in Quebec, it's really it's really difficult. Like, you try to bring a dog to a restaurant or to like a volleyball game, and they just don't have that same level of understanding. So in Ontario, when you train an employee, part of it is accessibility. And they know about the service dog, and that's why restaurants in Ontario are pretty well versed. So they see him walk in, they don't bother him, and they often ask, like, "Hey, can we get him some water or something?" But if you go to Quebec, I've been asked to leave several times, and I'm like, "You guys can't do that." And they're like, "We don't care what he is." I'm like, "Okay, it's a human rights issue." So Ontario and Quebec are very different, and then every school board is going to be different. So you really got to do a lot of research and talk to a lot of people before you can even get remotely close to what you're looking for. And it's going to take time. So don't think it's going to be like a 1 or 2 month thing. It could literally take years before you figure it all out. And you want to make sure that you're covered too. You want to make sure that it's safe for you. What are your risks? What are your liabilities? And as a teacher, they have to look at, maybe you change your teaching position. Maybe you're no longer the prep and planning teacher going class to class. All of a sudden you stay in the one class with, the same 30 kids. You don't go to kindergarten. There's all these different parameters that help lessen the risk, and they're always looking for that as well. And the more you can provide help that way, they open it up a little bit in terms of trying to help you as well. But don't expect everything to stay status quo. Expect change, but expect it, you gotta be reasonable with it. And, going class to class, or, I can only use certain doors in the school, and that's just to reduce my contact with kids. And now that we have COVID, it's pretty much the same protocols anyways. So, he went from my service dog to my social distancing dog. Like, it's done pretty well. So, now that I'm able to work full time again, I'm super happy and very glad that my school board figured it out. And I know they're in the process actually now of having another one brought in shortly. So,
oh wow. So
yeah.
it is inspiring change in a way, and even though it hasn't been the easiest process, I feel like the main message too is the lack of education and a lot of misinformation when it comes to service animals. And I think that was our main motivation with choosing this topic for our research for this for our individual difference conference.
And the other thing, and you guys, I know you guys keep saying support animals. Even that definition, it's not technically right, because he's a service dog. Like, and you'll get into like therapy dog, service dog, guide dog, support dog, and they're all very different because they allow you different things. A guide dog is usually certified, provided by an organization, whereas a therapy dog goes through incredible training. Like, it's almost the same as a guide dog. A service dog can be as little trained as none, but they get their certification from, like, you can buy one off the internet from like CanadianServiceDogs.com. It's not real. It's not fake. It's just nothing. But if I show somebody Mac's service dog card, they're like, "Oh, that's totally legit." I'm like, actually, my doctor's notes, the legal paper. But yeah, so it's a lot of uninformed education systems, but they're definitely figuring it out more and more as mental health becomes more at the forefront, and I couldn't be happier about it. Like, it's just, if you're going to talk about mental health and supporting your staff, you got to start looking at how, maybe it's not just about meditation, or it's not just about, be well, but it's actually about, processes that involve service animals, or, really different accommodations. And it takes time. Like I said, nobody really has all the answers. I just have the answers that worked for me. So.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for being part of our project and our research. It's, like I said, even just you correcting us on using the term support animal, that's been very helpful. So we're really glad that we could have had this conversation with you today.